orgasmic enlightenment, where the sexual and spiritual come together. I'm Kim Anami, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. In this show, we explore all things intimate. I believe that our sexual energy is life force, creative energy, and we can use it to shape our worlds, strengthen our relationships, and self-actualize. I blend the most avant-garde information from neuroscience, ancient sexual practices like Tantra and Taoism, to renegade wellness modalities to show you how to create gourmet sex in your lives. Come one, come all. Polarity, the hottest sexual chemistry, the universal law of opposites. What is chemistry? It's the spark, the attraction that draws you together. In relationship, this could be many things. I often see it as a karmic interchange where we recognize something in the other person that is necessary for us to work out and balance as part of our spiritual development, and so we are drawn to each other. Most people never see that, and so they just get stuck in difficult patterns and think that they have a bad relationship, and then they leave. This is a quote from Carl Jung on chemistry that I love. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Chemistry is a message that there is something here for us. At its more core primal level, chemistry is visceral, animal, an inexorable pull, a spontaneous wetness between the legs, an erection that springs to life without any touch. A pounding heart, a dizzy head, weakness in the knees, a full body flush. I posted a reel on Instagram the other day with the caption, "The hottest sexual chemistry." And the full post read, "The hottest sexual chemistry and couples who can't keep their hands off each other generally have exaggerated feminine and masculine energies at play. Archetypically speaking, feminine energy is softer, open, receptive, and embodies the spiritual notion of surrender, the goddess archetype. Masculine energy is more active, achievement-oriented, driven, takes charge, and makes things happen, the warrior archetype. We all have these energies at play. For the most part, women inhabit feminine energy and men masculine energy. On a primal level, women want their men stronger than them. They want a man who can be the protector, who can stand his ground, who exudes power and confidence, is dominant, and can take the lead. Men enjoy a woman who can truly open herself, trust, and fully surrender to him. She can go with the flow. Our sex life gives us a chance to explore and play with these themes, to experiment, try them on, and bring dormant parts of us to the surface." Needless to say, this post was very popular because it's true. If you felt it, you know. If you have felt the thrill of a confident, dominant man picking you up and throwing you over his shoulder and taking you into the bedroom, you know. If your man has you pinned up against the wall, spreads your legs, nuzzles into your neck, and growls to you all the things he's going to do to you, you know. If your man takes charge in your lives together and in his own, is directive and sure of himself, you know. Your pussy knows. If your woman is soft and flowing and receptive and shows how she trusts you, you know. If she looks into your eyes with pure adoration and surrender as you are fucking the shit out of her and she is utterly melted, you know. And your cock knows. Everybody knows. We live in a world of polarity and duality, of yin and yang, sun and moon, light and dark, good and evil. That is the whole point of being here, to know ourselves by pressing up against our opposites and getting fucked open by them. There is little more pleasurable than this feeling of being seen, known, desired, and penetrated by our opposite. Fuck gender neutrality. Give me polarity. Give me extremes. Give me the laws of nature. Give me a man ravishing the shit out of me and penetrating and fucking me into oblivion. To be clear, pussy is delicious, but cock is what fuels my life, precisely because it is the yang to my yin. The only people who dismiss these truths are so traumatized or programmed that they cannot see or feel what is real any longer. The level of openness and vulnerability that is required to truly allow yourself to be penetrated and seen becomes too much for them. And so they retreat into the safety, or the illusory safety, of neutrality. A lot of couples have come to me over the years stuck in some kind of gender neutral spasm. And of course, they have stopped having sex. Surprise, surprise. For my generation, which is Generation X, women were programmed to take on more masculine qualities to be able to achieve things in the world. The messaging that we received is that if you want to climb the corporate ladder or have business success, then you would have to embody masculine energy. Feminine energy just is not welcome in the workplace or the corporate world, and you will not be taken seriously. So women, and for a time that included me, took on masculine traits and energies. Men around this time were experiencing cultural backlash for being toxic masculine and were taught that they needed to get more in touch with their feelings and their emotional sides, which is a great thing, obviously. But along the way, and with the best of intentions, many couples reached this stagnancy of gender neutrality. They equalized everything. They were both income earners, they shared child rearing and household chores. And again, I have no problem with that. But in the midst of all of this, they lost the essence of what it means to be masculine and feminine. They stopped cherishing their archetypal differences and enjoying them. And the same thing is happening now, but with a different language. The vilification of the essential masculine and feminine is rampant. I'll tell you this right now. No one who claims to have gender neutrality is having great sex. No one. And if I had to name it, I'd say that's the whole point of this psyop. People won't be having sex and reproducing anymore because they won't have any genitals left. Newsflash, you actually need these things for human reproduction. That's how it works. So, couples come to me and the spark is gone. Can they get it back? Well, it depends on whether they had it before, which is easier because we know that it was there and something covered it up, or they never had it at all, which is harder because their head made the decision to unite with this person, not their hearts or their genitals. When we peel off their protective layers and we see what's underneath, we don't know what we'll find. Most people and relationships are layered up with so much trauma and programming and unresolved issues that they are not able to access their love and vulnerability underneath all of that. Part of the layering up is people straying away from their true essences and natures. Let's say that you have a man who grew up with a violent father, which is the true toxic expression of masculinity. So he vows never to be that man, and he swings to the opposite side of the spectrum. He doesn't express his truth, he has no boundaries, and he's a pushover. A woman may have similarly disowned her feminine energy. Maybe she didn't have trauma, but she grew up with the messaging that we all do, or at least, my generation, that she needs to man up to make it in this world. So these two meet, they fall in safety, not love, and they decide that each is a suitable non-risk to be with. And they're right. They will never get to the deep, raw, naked heart and naked genital, passionate love that changes themselves and changes the world. They will be stuck in gender neutral, politically correct, ultra safe, and completely unfuckable purgatory forever. And they will tell you ad infinitum how they are such good buddies and good partners, and sex really isn't all that important in a relationship anyway, because there is no fucking way that this couple is having good sex. The occasional, once a year, duty and guilt-bound sex they do have is almost certainly going to involve a limp dick because non-masculine men can't get it up, and a dry vagina. So lots of lube, maybe some Viagra, some antidepressants, because deep down they hate the deadening lie of existence they have created for themselves. Their sexual organs likely begin to manifest some kind of ailment. She might have painful periods and a growth on an ovary. He's got ED, and when he can get it up, then it's PE, or premature ejaculation, maybe an enlarged prostate. They both have low libidos, like this is some kind of condition that you mysteriously get rather than you being with someone you just don't want to fuck. Chemistry is where it's at. Chemistry will change your life. Chemistry is your body's way of telling you that you are on track. You are good for me and my genitals. The wildest, most vulnerable, life-changing sex happens when you are all in, when you are so powerfully attracted, smitten, enchanted, entranced, and in full adoration of the other person. You are open to them and they are open to you. If you are living a life of posturing and protection and pretend with all of the societal overlay that you've adapted to fit in or be politically correct, or because you just don't know what you don't know, you will not reach these places. It is much safer to be gender neutral and such good buddies. You won't get hurt. You'll be living in this territory of the neutral zone. And then people start to justify that as a way of life. And they come up with all kinds of elaborate theories, as we're now seeing, of why this is the way it is. In today's episode, we are talking to well-fucked all-star couple Jim and Meg. Jim and Meg are self-confessed Anami whores, to use Jim's colorful words, to describe how they have signed up for every Anami Salon since they began this journey last year with Coming Together. We interviewed Jim in an episode from August 2022, which is season 4, episode 26, called How to Fuck Your Woman into Oblivion. He shared in that conversation as well how the major key to them totally transforming their relationship was them amplifying their masculine and feminine energies. He talked about how this led to the best sex they've ever had and all the reverberations of that into their day-to-day lives. Today, we're going even deeper into the oblivion fucking territory. We're going to be joined by Meg, his partner, and they will both share their perspectives on this provocative and oh so profound topic of polarity. There is a lot to unpack here because on the surface, it can be easy to misunderstand what we're getting at. And this conversation between the three of us does a brilliant job of going deep enough to do that. So if you're feeling a bit provoked, that's a good thing. I am a provocateur, after all. It's my job. Stay with it. Open yourself up to the very deep ideas here. I also realize that so much of what we talk about runs totally contrary to the current brainwashing and propaganda that's out there about gender ideology. I'll let you know right now, I do not give a shit. I gleefully, gloriously do not give a flying fuck. So if you feel compelled in your underfucked state to try to educate me to do better, don't bother. In other words, fuck off. I'm here to fuck on, fuck through, and fuck all over the place and help all those people who want the same thing to get there. You can go back to your sexless, gender-neutral, psyop existence and go write some anonymous internet comments to get your non-sex on. We will all be over here getting fucked into oblivion. Without further ado, here are Jim and Meg. Well fucked all-stars. Right. Welcome, Jim and Meg. It's so great to have you here.
Hey, Kim, good to be here.
Always good to be here.
So tell us about the evolution in your relationship of your masculine-feminine dynamic. And then in the way that I talk about and teach this stuff, how that's shifted for you and what you recognize as being out of balance in the past and how that impacted your relationship and the rest of your lives, and then where you've been coming to now.
Okay. Well, after coming together, I hopped into, she did Well Fucked Woman. And then I hopped into Sexual Mastery for Men. And we were just loading our tool belts with more Anami tools. And we were riding high after those salons. We really were in a great place. We were implementing everything that you were teaching, and life goes on, and we had our ups and downs and our struggles, but the tools that you just laid upon us had helped us to identify and just do an about face, where before we would just have no way to correct the spin that we were in,
or even recognize that we were in that spin. So the biggest thing that we learned with the first salon after coming together was how to balance our polarity, where I was in my masculine constantly and Jim wasn't in his masculine. I wouldn't say he was so much in his feminine, but not leading us, and just and I was a bulldog, whether it was my personal life, my work life with my kids. And so there was that constant unhappiness and unsettling, feeling, and he recognized it, but I didn't. So the biggest thing that we identified after coming out of, coming together was recognizing that imbalance in our polarity. And that then evolved into Well-Fucked Woman, which was, embracing my feminine in a bigger way. And it really helped me spend time on myself, because we started as in the couple salon, but Well-Fucked Woman really helped me focus on me and what is it that I needed to do to recognize how to be in my feminine on my own, a lot of times without Jim necessarily driving it, through his specifically the sexual aspect of it. And then Jim did the sexual mastery for men, which really brought out, I think, the purpose that he was looking for and gave him a sense of direction in his life. And so we have been thriving. We've had our ups and downs, no doubt. But with all the tools, like you said, that you've empowered us with, we recognize very quickly when there's a shift in polarity, because this is stuff we're undoing of, 40 some years of, a certain way that we've been living our lives. But we recognize it very quickly. We use the tools that you've given us to start moving in the direction of being in that bliss that we're in when we both are in our polarity, me and my feminine and him and his masculine.
Can you describe more of what that means for people? So when you're in your polarity, things are working better. You're in your feminine, he's in his masculine. What does that feel like, and what does that look like?
Yeah. Can I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think this has been the biggest shift for me. And I did, growing up, I was always told, whether it was my parents or friends, that you're, you should have been a boy, you should have been a guy, like you have all these, characteristics.
Strong characteristics.
Yes, of someone that would lead and would take charge. And so I subconsciously grew up just thinking that maybe I was, misgendered in a way, but never thought I should have been a boy, but more of a, okay, so I am a woman, but I've been blessed with all these qualities that, I have, and I should use them for my benefit. And so whether it was my personal life, where I thought I was a strong, assertive woman, or my professional life, I've always come in, I've always led with my masculine, like be that decision maker, drive things, make things happen. But what I never recognized, and this is something that Jim started to take notice of, is that I was constantly unhappy. And I had no reason to be unhappy. I have a great job. I have a wonderful husband, amazing kids when we had kids. And every day I'd come home and, have a short fuse. I'd be frustrated all the time. And I attributed that to every ounce of patience I had, I've used up at work. So I can't do that anymore. When in reality, it was all due to the fact that I was living in my masculine and just trying to not embrace my feminine, meaning be it was just against everything that came naturally to me when I didn't even recognize what came naturally to me, which was being in my feminine. And so through the course, that was one of the biggest shifts we had. And I recognized that I was constantly in my masculine and I didn't need to be. And when I stopped doing that, stopped leading, being aggressive all the time, coming from it like a man would, instead of approaching things from a more feminine perspective, boy, oh boy, did that change things. And I, go ahead. It sounds like you had a question.
Yeah. How would you approach things from a more feminine perspective?
So I would say just not having to constantly feel like I'm in a flight and fight mode. So one, being better fucked, I will say that, helped without a doubt. Because yes, we thought we had a great sex life, but I was clearly underfucked. So having, amazing sex, those incredible orgasms definitely helped. But it also, with that, the meditations that you provided, doing the jade egg, all the tools basically, just helped me approach things from a more nurturing way and more of a softer, what's the word I'm looking for? More, being just letting the world lead things and letting it fall into place instead of feeling like I have to be in control all the time. And when you approach it from the perspective of I'm surrendering, I know the world will catch me if I fall. I know Jim will catch me if I fall. Things do fall into place. I don't have to think 4 months ahead as to how my life's going to turn out, because it's going to turn out exactly how I want it to if I let go. So letting go was a big part of recognizing that's what helps me be in my feminine without having to feel like I'm constantly leading and taking charge.
So instead of like thinking and making a decision about something you want and bulldozing and maybe ignoring signs that might be guiding you this way a little bit or that way a little bit, you're just like full steam ahead, I got this. Whereas opposite of that is you can still choose what you want, but you're more open to signs from the universe, to help from the universe, and from maybe it's like slowing down to even listen to your intuition, and then not coming from like, I have to, bulldoze through this or it's not going to happen. You can go at an easier pace and trust that what's meant to be will be. Yeah.
You are absolutely right. Yes, I think you articulated it better than I could have said it. But the big thing there is the signs from the universe and letting things fall into place as they're supposed to. That was huge. And that's been constant, happening to me constantly.
Just at her job, yes. There was like so many signs where it was like...
It's like the universe was holding me and shaking me. And in the past, I would have been like, whatever, it's a coincidence. Yes.
Seriously.
Like, I've got this.
Yes.
But I used to come home and I would tell Jim about these things. And he's like, it's like, it's the universe sending you signs. And I said, damn right it is. And it's catching me and it's preventing me from doing things that, I probably would have done and wound up in a worse situation than I am, because I'm not letting things play out the way they need to and trust the process. And so you're 100% right. It absolutely, that was a huge shift for me.
Yep. And when she's like, our polarity is messed up, I'm miserable. I am a miserable son of a bitch because I'm unhappy. It's just, once you've had that taste of the correct polarity, when it's not there, it just sucks.
We're both unhappy. I get miserable, he gets miserable, and we recognize it very quickly, and step back from it.
And it's time to clear the glass and have talks like, shit, that happened.
Let's back up let's pause for 1 second. So Jim, what does it look like for you then when you're in your, like when you're imbalanced, and out of polarity, like you said, you're miserable, but how else does that look? And then how does it look when you're in your polarity, right? Like in your, whatever, your masculine essence, like what does that look and feel like for you in the same way that Meg described it for her?
I will say that when I am out of balance and we're out of balance and I'm not in my masculine, then it seems like you're working so much harder to get anything done. The relationship, I'm just like, ready just to be like, all right, what are we doing here? Back into the old unhappiness, right? And it's just, and I think that the house becomes more, everybody in the house becomes more agitated. My work is not as efficient and streamlined, and like my head down and working because I'm thinking about the relationship and how out of balance we are and how bad it sucks. So you're thinking about, it's like being like depressed almost, in a depressive state. And I'll have to do like energy clearing on myself and things like that just to get basically my energy up, because I feel such a zap of energy, whether it be working out or wanting to eat right or do all these things in my progression of changing into a more masculine man. It's just, everything becomes just a struggle, because if there's no happiness in the home, it's just like, fuck it, because I don't know, it's so hard to describe, because we lived that way so long. And then when we went through all these classes, it was completely different. And when you get back into it, you're just like, it's amazing how it sucks you in, right? Like you have to put in the work because it sucks you in, and you start just being an asshole to yourself and to your spouse and your kids and everything like that. I mean, it's huge. It is huge. That polarity, that masculine, in the polar opposite, when I'm in my masculine, I am grabbing the world by its ears and fucking it in its face, right? But when I am not, then I am back to being a purposeless bitch like I was before I met Kim Anami, right? It's that big for me.
Tell us more about fucking the world in its face and then being a purposeless bitch.
So for me, when I was not in my masculine, I didn't take care of Meg. I wasn't there for the boys. Not that I was a bad dad or anything like that, but I wasn't there like 1,000% like I am now, leading my boys, teaching them, pushing them, making them better, boys and, soon to be men. And then I was just a drifter. Like I knew that I wanted to do all these things. Businesses were always like this, confidence was low. Weight kind of was always like up and down, things like that. It was just like a boat without a rudder, just purposeless. And then when you're purposeless like that and you have no male essence or that masculine essence, then you are a bit of a bitch. It is what it is, right? You're just like, bitch. You're a whiny beta bitch. I don't think I was like, I didn't, was it coif my hair or like, I wasn't like metrosexual or anything like that. But like, I would just say like, I needed to step up. I needed ass kicking, right? Now, on the other hand, when I'm in my masculine, I feel like I can conquer the world. I am like just kicking ass on what I need to do. My purpose is laser focused, right? I have a complete plan of how we're going to switch our roles for good permanently. I think I'd like to, I don't know if we should talk about it now or later, but we're in this dynamic where she's been the breadwinner, for most, because I've always had like 1099 type jobs, like independent contractor, right? I've ran my own hedge fund, et cetera, et cetera. So I've always done the risky stuff, and she's been stable. And so she's had like, that's the reason the role has been like really reversed, right?
So in your outer, like particularly like your vocational lives, right? So
Yeah.
in terms of earning and career, you're saying that Meg's had this traditional, more masculine role.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
had a more feminine role.
Yes. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you that that is a huge source of, I would say, frustration. And I think it's not just me, but talking to other men like SMM and other men that I do like energy clearing work with, I think that is just huge, beyond huge. You know, not saying that she has to be home with a maid outfit and like, you know, whatever, to have her own, you know, go into her own business and all that kind of stuff. But the main taking care of the house
and providing
for your family is such a masculine necessity. I cannot even stress it. And I know that will piss some people off, but I don't care, because I know it to be true. It is true. You have to provide for your family. You have to provide for your wife. And if, you know, you have to give her that option to choice to explore what she wants to explore, or explore being a great mom, or whatever it is, right? That it is for her to feel feminine. I never gave that to her, ever. And I never knew how necessary that was until I went through your classes, period.
Yeah.
It again, it took me from like just a purposeless, just lost little bitch into just crazy masculine guy who I know I have a plan. It's going to work. You know, I'm busting my balls doing it, and, you know, it's going to change our relationship, you know, I think permanently. I think that's why we also, you know, we get into these lulls, ebbs and flows, because that is the ultimate thing that will come up for us. That is the thing that tips our polarity the most. And I think, I know that once that is reversed, then we're not going to have these ebbs and flows of our, because she's not going to have to be at an office, you know, but even though she's doing her
without a choice, you
yes.
know, it's so the thing that I want to add to this, and I'm sure a lot of women are in this position, but I felt like I didn't have the option or the choice to do what I wanted to do, and had to keep at, you know, doing what I was doing, even when I had 2 kids, to make sure we had stability from a family perspective. And that shouldn't have been my role. That should have been Jim's role. And that was huge, because that's that anger, that resentment that I've had in terms of I was not able to do what I wanted to do. And I always thought of that as the freedom to explore career choices. But now when I look back at what is it that I really wanted to do, what I wanted to do was to be at home with my children, with my boys, the first 5-6 years of their life. And I fight that battle still, you know, the guilt of not being able to do that and nurture them, raise them. I mean, how empowering is that as a mother? We are, you know, as women, that's our strength. And for me to not have the option to have even been able to embrace that. And, you know, we poo-poo, oh, you know, why do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Oh, man, what a waste of, you know, your brain. And why would you want to, you know, waste all this education you've had? That then inherently feeds into fighting your feminine, which to me, my whole life, I've looked at being in my feminine as a weakness. You know, it's a sign of weakness. And if anything, it's a strength. And to me, that was the biggest shift and then the change. Like I could never pinpoint and say, why is it that I'm frustrated? Why is it that I'm unhappy? And going through these courses with you and being able to, understand and recognize it was polarity. It was not being in my feminine. And then realizing, why was I not in my feminine? Well, because Jim wasn't in his masculine. So it has really opened, the source of our unhappiness was the polarity issues that we had, which an environment did not allow us to be in the roles that we wanted to be, and we still are not there yet, like Jim said, but we recognize it, and
we have a plan, and we were able to, through clearing the glass, like pinpoint what it was, right? And categorize everything and understand everything. That was all through glass clearing and just working through all this. And then also our independent work through WFW and SMM, and combining all these different things. It's really allowed us to have an understanding, which is, to me, like very powerful, because we have a plan and we stick to it. And then, there are frustration days and things like that, but
that's when we realize we need to clear the glass, run into the bedroom,
and have a good fucking.
Yes. but we fixed all the peripheral things that I think stemmed out of that polarity imbalance that we had. And then the final thing for us is just reversing the role of me being the provider financially in our household, and Jim taking charge of that, so I can.
And I'm going to do that.
Figure out what
doing the most masculine thing that I could ever do is, like, basically by protecting our home. But it's funny how that happens, right? Like the thing that's going to reverse us is one of the most masculine things that I could do. So it's just fitting, I guess you could say, that it's going to end up like that.
Okay, so how about how your polarity showed up sexually? So you have this going on in your outer lives, and then what did that look like in the bedroom, and what kind of correlation was there during this?
Oh, when we're out of polarity, we have dry spells. Seriously, it's as simple as that. There was, like, we had a pretty long dry spell, and I think, was it a couple weeks ago, like, she was kind of laying in bed and tired and whatnot, and I literally just took my cock and put it down her throat and got things started, so, and that's like it's the spark that, like, gets us back, going back in the masculine and the feminine.
So Jim leading in the bedroom is a huge turn on, and it's not to say that we didn't have a good sex life. We didn't.
I'm telling you, like, we thought we did.
Yeah.
No, we thought we did.
Yes.
But, like, since you taught us gourmet sex, no, we didn't have. No, we were like vanillas, like just your average Joe sex who thinks it's awesome,
Very true. And so when Jim is in his masculine, that, to answer your question about how that polarity shows up in the bedroom, it's a huge turn on. When he leads, you feel, I feel his energy. I feel like he's taking charge. It makes me want to surrender and just let go. And that is huge, because the more I learn about letting go, and especially in the bedroom, the more amazing sex I have. And, I've never cried when I've had sex, and some of the orgasms that, we've had yesterday, twice, where I was just bawling, and I was like, okay, I needed that. It puts me in this, I feel like I'm walking on clouds, Kim, and it's just a zen, beautiful feeling, blissful feeling. And the only other time that I've felt bliss physically is when I've held my babies and my children. And so when I describe to Jim how I feel in the bedroom after we've had this amazing encounter where he's in his masculine and I'm in my feminine, it literally feels blissful. And there's no other way in my mind to describe it.
Yeah, and I'm in control too. So like I can fuck her for 30 minutes or more, and that's, how we have
10 minutes used to be like an accomplishment.
Yeah. As long as she came first, I was like, all right, now I can just
I'm a winner.
now I can stop thinking about Margaret Thatcher, right?
Old flex, new flex.
Right. So, and the other night we were, it was cervical followed by waves, by cervical. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's a lot of the cervical orgasms that she has have been like emotional releases. But the other night was the first time I believe there was just like pure bliss, right? Because we've worked on all this cathartic releases of emotions, and now she's getting to the point where they're blissful, still crying and all that kind of stuff, but it's different
waves of emotion. So when you say, Kim, like, go deeper and there's always more to explore, that's so true, because I'm experiencing that definitely in our relationship. But it's always, to me, I've always wanted a more masculine man in my life, someone that can take charge. There's no bigger turn on than Jim taking charge, leading the initiative, and not going, do you feel like having sex today? Instead of just picking me up, taking me to the bedroom, throwing me on the bed and doing what he needs to do. Such a huge turn on. And so when you've said that in a lot of your online content, it is so true. And I would challenge any woman out there to disagree with me, because that is a fact. And that puts us in surrender and helps me enjoy, sex even more.
So I put together a program as well. And just the mere fact of me putting together the program was a huge turn on, because it was me doing, the initiative, right? And
what kind of program was it, Jim?
Oh, Kim, let me just so like we really got into lingam massages and yoni massages and things like that. Mm-hmm. And as Meg became more in her surrender, she was able to now understand meditation and spiritual, like, transcendence and getting, to your higher self and all those kinds of things.
And exchanging energy.
Right? But those were all foreign concepts that I always wanted from her and never got, until we went through these courses where she's allowed herself to crack her own, like, kind of glass clearing, right? Her own wall around herself is crumbling so that she can be with herself and get into that energy, right? That beautiful energy that we all have, that 99% of us are scared to tap into, right?
And I think listening to that too, and what Meg was saying earlier, I think as a woman, especially, let's say, from our period of time or generation, there was this real like pushing away of anything feminine, right? Feelings, yuck. Like internal, like anything that had echoes of the feminine was weakness and wouldn't be productive in terms of getting ahead in the world. And so for me, any like feelings, I was like, oh, what is the use of that? That is such a waste of time. Like literally had those kinds of thoughts, years and decades ago. And so I wonder if part of that was an association with those things as being feminine, right?
Well,
100%.
But I also wonder if it also is that, she felt comfortable enough and safe enough to finally go
let my walls down.
Let her walls down, but like within herself though, too, right? Because
but Kim is 100% right. Like
I'm wrong.
No.
Both. I see it being both.
Yes,
just
my
kidding.
my dad, like I remember growing up too, it was always a think with your head, not your heart, because your heart can mislead you, and
Right.
especially as a
Right.
woman.
Yeah.
And every time I've had a gut feeling about something, or in retrospect, ever responded to something from my heart, it's always been right. And I told Jim last night, it was, for the probably first time in I don't know how many years. I said, Jim, I've always made every decision ever with my head. Even the thought of like having a first child. Okay, we've been married 3 years, we're good. Everybody around us is, it's that stupid. How much we let that take over our lives. And I said to him last night, I said, Jim, one of the few decisions I've made with my heart was my decision to marry you and be with you. I went with because logically, oh gosh, we'd been dating less than a month. We didn't know each other. I didn't know much about his background, but whatever, it's something clicked. And in my heart, I knew this was right. And I followed it. And clearly, like, despite all the things that haven't worked out for us, he was the right man for me. And I realized that after coming together even more.
I think I more became the right man, right? It was
But
always in there,
smart,
right? It was
the
always
same
in
thing.
there, but.
So, because I wouldn't have married him if that wasn't the case, because inherently deep down, I knew, how I felt. But you're so right. We've been really trained, and now more so than ever, to be in that constant, fighting what comes naturally to us, which is ingrained in our heads to be a weakness, when if anything, it's the strengths that we have.
So beautiful. So how else would you say that the correction of polarity and the inhabiting of your sexual energies has impacted your outer life? So you've talked a little bit about career and work, and are there any other areas where you've noticed the reverberations out? Because in the way that I frame these things, the couple really is the heart, the energy generator, the fuel source for not only their own connection, but for their family, for their community. Like, we're all these power generators when we're really synced up together. Like, really, if you really think about it that way, that concept of polarity really is the negative and the positive come together, right? And an electric charge. We create that charge every time we're having sex, if we're having sex in a conscious way and not just dumping out that energy. So we are these power generators all over the place. No wonder there's such a huge effort to confuse people about what their sexuality really is.
Of course.
So knowing that, and knowing and feeling and seeing these waves move out from you out into your world, what other impacts have you seen happen in your worlds?
I think by now being in that polarity and that masculine, having the balls to speak my truth, even just with my neighbor, right? We had some work done, and instead of just like sweeping it under the rug, and it came to me that he was not happy that we were starting this project or whatever. I just went out there and talked to him about it, right? I wasn't, pussy about it. And he was like, so, oh, no, just like, I just thought it was doing this and whatever, but it smoothed everything out, and there was nothing to be had. So nothing to be agitated about, or nothing awkward, no awkwardness, right? So just even with your neighbors, having the confidence to speak and be this man that I'm supposed to be is, I believe, inspirational to other men. And then in our own community and within our own house, I believe our boys, it's changed a lot with our boys.
Dynamic with our kids.
And again, just me.
Is it that, are you guys referring to the Fookmore parenting method?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I thought so.
Yes, and our 8-year-old is like, going to the bedroom. raising the eyebrows, and he thinks we're just gonna kiss, which is fine. But
we're going to recharge the battery and plug in.
Exactly. But I think it's allowed me to be more present with them, right? And really appreciate my time with them, and then to lead them, to work on them mentally, like, and hopefully set an example for how to be a man, how to be masculine, right? Because we have, a dynamic with both of our boys. One's older and sensitive. The younger one is like more Tasmanian, like devil, like more like, street smart, right?
Yeah.
But for me, because I know that's how I grew up, like my older one. And so if I can show him now how to be, masculine, and teach him so that he can recover in whether he's doing sports or anything like that, to have the confidence inside himself, right? That's huge. And then
especially in an environment where all our kids hear about is, toxic masculinity and all these ideas that are being floated. These are keywords, that they constantly hear and they start believing. And so a lot of the things that we have to do,
at what age are hearing about toxic masculinity?
Third grade, like we pulled our kids out of public school.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible.
Yeah, we don't need propaganda, education. And so to us, it was huge because and it's not that it shelters them completely, because they do other things, where they hear these things or start observing things, and we want them to be comfortable in their skin and own what they have, and it's a beautiful thing. And had I recognized that, I would have turned out to be so different, as growing it to be a young teenager or as a woman. And I wouldn't have had this constant polarity struggle, that I've been dealing with my entire life. 40 years of it is exhausting and it's terrible. And so we want our boys to, recognize their strengths as men and grow up to be, the men that they need to be.
Well, here's another thing too. You talk about community, like within our circle of friends, we can be at, a New Year's party or whatever it is, and people will poke fun of us, like you guys are always all over each other and blah, 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 blah. But that's inspired other people to come to us separately outside the group to say,
yes, what's going on?
What's going on? I sent one of the folks in our little circle of friends our YouTube video between the first interview, and she watched it, and now she identifies on a different level with Meg because she's experiencing the same thing. So we're out in the community, living this new life and inspiring other people to say, or
helping them recognize the same things that
why are they unhappy? Why are they because everybody puts on their everything's okay face, right? And then when again, part of that masculine energy and feminine energy is to be vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. And to allow that yourself to show that, and not, it's not a weakness, right? And to say, hey, I was like that too. I struggled here. I think this can help you, right? You need to go see Kim's work. You need to do all this kind of stuff. And so we're inspiring other people. You always get the people who think that everything's great and they've got great sex lives and yada, 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 when you know that they're screaming for help on the inside. But the people that we're able to affect in the community who will listen, they're changing their own lives.
For me, it's also been, I've had a more open relationship and discussion about this with my mother, my own mother, who basically, stayed at home, raised us. and always thought of that to be a sign of weakness. Like, she's extremely feminine, my mother, and she raised me to be anything but like her. And so we've talked about that and recognized how, I admire what she did, and to look at that as a strength, and how lucky she was to be able to embrace, her feminine, because she grew up in a very different era and generation where she didn't have to fight that. And that being said, nothing will get done in that house without my mom's permission. And my dad recognizes that. So he gives her that respect and catches her. If she says, I don't want to live in this city, I'm miserable here, he will change his job and go somewhere else to make sure his wife is happy. So I started to recognize that dynamic between my parents, which I don't think I ever had before. And then, having that open conversation with them. So it's been just amazing.
Yeah, here's the other thing too. You created a monster when you gave us the tools to heal our own traumas with all the different modalities and things like that. And so I became a master of one, and I'm able to go in the community and help others with their trauma, which is huge, because I never would have done that if I didn't have the confidence and the masculine energy to lead somebody through something like that, some like very, very, very heavy stuff that I've worked with folks with. But being that rudderless, purposeless person, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't be out in the community helping other people with energy clearing and trauma and things like that. And that would not have happened without your classes. I didn't know about any of that stuff before I started working with you.
And he uses that on our boys too. So it's been amazing. Yes. The whole concept of energy clearing and blockage is something that he recognizes, like especially with our older one who's a competitive swimmer, and will tell us, I feel like I'm swimming through mud. I've hit a wall. I can't get past it. He asks for tapping before we go to a meet now. Yep. And it's just
aligning his dantians.
Yes, and his chakras, and it's just
and he's a different swimmer.
So he noticed it. Yeah.
Oh, he's a different swimmer. 100%. But again,
it's night and day.
We're using everything that we've learned in Anami land and paying it forward.
It's very empowering, Kim. I mean, for anybody that, I hope people that are listening recognize, these struggles that we have daily, and are able to understand why. And so much of it stems back to polarity. It's just incredible.
Well, here's the thing. You give people the tools to recognize, right? Because otherwise you're in this hamster wheel of, I'm pissed off, she's pissed off, now I'm super unhappy, and I'm living this, rat race life. And then when you get off that train and you take a stop and go through coming together or VKF or SMM, any of those things, then it's like, you shower us with the gifts of being able to recognize and say, okay, this is what's causing that wheel to spin. This is what's causing that train to just push us through life that we don't, you're going through unconsciously, right? You had this beautiful, like one of the best things I think I've seen you post on your Instagram, where it was like transcending and it's trans-ending, right? And that's what any salon that you offer allows people, if they put the work into it, to end the trance that they're in.
Yep. That is so lovely, so beautifully put. Is there anything else that you two like to add?
Just fuck a lot. But good gourmet sex, right? And for the guys out there, I would say that this has made me recognize that it's so funny, because when we get in our ruts, you don't want to be the person that, that nudges. Like, that's the old me, right? The before Kim Anami me. the underfucked Jim, right? So as the man in your masculine, you have to recognize that you have to be the one that kickstarts this, that jumpstarts, that takes control, again, in the bedroom, whatever it is, to show that feminine woman, that partner of yours, that it's okay for her to become that delicate flower, right? It's going to be okay. And once you do that, and then you have this amazing sex and glass clearing and just honesty, right? Like, I think the other night too, I was just, again, being able to speak your truth to your partner and be confident about that. And also understanding that you're taking that 150% on your side and whatever, and there's no judgment. But I felt like, so I'll give you an example. Like a couple nights ago, we were clearing the glass, and I told Meg, I think for the first time, back when we were having like all of our troubles, like all this would come up. She's like, do you want me to just be a traditional woman? You just want me to do this and that. I thought you wanted a strong woman. And I think the other night is the first time I ever told her, is like, I wanted to tell her yes back then, but I was too much of a pussy because I didn't know like what would happen, right? And now I was like, I have no fear of saying, this is what I want. This is what I want from you. This is what I need from you, right? And then, as I talk about that, there's still like the two sides, right? I still worship her in her own way and all that, but I am more of a man about it, to say, this is what I need. This is what I want. This is, yes, you're gonna propose this question to me. I'm gonna tell you the truth now, right? I'm not gonna be a bitch about it.
Well, the phrase you just said, I'm going to be a man about it. So what is a man? What does being a man mean?
Man, you stumped me that last interview, right? And I was kind of rambling. I've been thinking about this so much and wanting to be prepared, but it is absolutely being in control, right, of yourself, right? Having that confidence, speaking your truth, being in touch with your lingam and letting your lingam like shine that light, that wand of light, right? Is it the
confidence,
the Vajra? Was it Vajra? That like the power, the lightning bolt of it, right? Mm-hmm. And then stepping up, right? And I also think it's protecting your home, right? It's protecting your family against all this stupid eating your eat the bugs and all that other bullshit, right? And I think that's a big part of being a man, right? Like, and protecting them from, the Kabuki 19 and the mask wearing and all that other bullshit, and standing up and being a light and being a shield and leading like that, right? And, there's the whole kind of alpha thing that I think is fake, right? There's a way to be alpha, but have all these different components and layers on there, being able to catch your woman and all that kind of stuff, and then being like your chest out and proud and like walking with confidence, which is my favorite word. And it's just, that is all these components of being a man. Huge.
And then Meg, what would you say being a woman is in this framework?
In this framework, it is learning how to surrender and letting go. And for me, that's been the biggest shift, recognizing polarity, recognizing my strengths as a woman, nurturing those, and taking care of myself, Kim. I don't think I had done that in so many years. And that's not, I'm going for a run, I need my me time. It's to internalize, to recognize the power of the energy, feminine energy that we have. All of that has been incredible and empowered me to be in my feminine, and outside of course the sexual orgasms that come with this. But it's been very life-changing for me. I've found my balance. I'm very nurturing to my children, something that I've always wanted to do. and they feel it, they recognize it, Jim recognizes it. And I've used the strengths that I've always recognized as a weakness to empower me. And I'll tell you this too, Kim, when I'm not in my feminine at work, things don't go my way. I feel like I'm constantly fighting and butting heads with people. But the minute I'm in my feminine, all these men around me seem to start agreeing with me, rather quickly than having to have an argument to prove my point. So it is just, I have seen the benefit of being in my feminine, even in a corporate world and environment, and making things happen the way I need them to be, versus being in my masculine and forcing them to happen the way they need to be. So it's been amazing.
I think also for the men, you need to lift iron, you need to do calisthenics. That is the one thing that I took away from SMM, is not only just like understanding that self-pleasuring and like just generating that power from your lingam, but also on the outside. Like I've taken that way more seriously now with my diet, and just getting on, like hiring a coach to get, more strength and things like that. I think that is essential for a guy, because there's so many potato chip and beer people, like whatever your poison is, right? And to be like, again, have that, I think also you need that camaraderie with other men as well, and probably the same with the women, right? Like to help you bask in that masculinity, right?
To find more of our kind. And actually we have been able to do that through your salons, and it's been really amazing to be with like-minded people that have recognized this and are in this journey together. So we've made quite a few friends along the way through the salon, and still keep in touch. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. So what would you say to people who might say, well, the things that you're describing aren't necessarily the jurisdiction of male or female? Like these are things that anyone could experience.
Bullshit. Sorry.
Yes.
This is bullshit. It's not just me, but other men that have gone through, like my brother's in SMM and her sisters in VKF or whatnot. We all experience the same thing. We're all human, right? We're not transhuman. We're not this, we're not that. We are all human, and we have very specific energies. And the people that are in touch and can tap into those energies, whatever you came down here to be, right? I think it's bullshit that people would ever think that, that this could be fake or not real, or that what I'm spewing or saying, or, they just can't jive with or whatnot, because they're hiding from something. They're not being authentic. And that I guarantee you that they are an unhappy, underfucked person, right? I have this body that I came down, I chose to be man, right? For the longest time, I thought I was a man, right? But I never tapped into that energy fully until you taught me, right? And that has been a source of my happiness now that I know what it is to tap into that energy. So there's no way that you can tell me that, polarity and, it's, it works for us. I can roll, I can be the more masculine woman and he can be feminine, all that kind of stuff. I guarantee you, I'll bet you all the money I have that there's unhappiness there, because they're not being authentic to their self. And I just think that is, the sooner that people stop pretending that, the happier they will be, right?
Yep.
So I'm very emphatic about that, because that had such an impact on me in your classes. right? It's literally changed my life. And that's how important it is to me.
It helped recognize and put that in words for us. Like what was the source of the unhappiness? Why were we unhappy? What did it mean, to have opposing polarity and being masculine, being feminine? Like all we knew is that we had some friction and we were unhappy, but couldn't tell why. And so going through your courses helped us recognize that. And we're all, I mean, a woman's a woman, to me, I feel like if I struggled with it, then I'm sure a lot of working mothers, are struggling with it. And why do you have that struggle? Because you're opposing something that's innately you and not embracing it and not recognizing it. So that's been huge for us.
You're opposing the source, right? Like that higher self, that consciousness, right? And you're trying to say that it's wrong. And because I was raised a certain way, or because I've had this trauma, or whatever I learned until I was 7 years old, and that's my program I'm running, you're going to justify it, saying, no, I can be a strong woman is this, or blah, blah, blah. And no, a strong woman is somebody that can be delicate and surrender and live life through, forging that path, right? I always like to use this analogy that it's like, the superheroes, right? And you've got Superman, you've got like, I don't know, with the Green Lantern, whatever. And this guy is jealous because he can do this, this, and this. And he's jealous of him because he can fly. He's got lasers out of his eyes, really. But what they are missing is that their own superpowers are beautiful and amazing if they use them right? If they use them and tap into them. There's no reason for me to be jealous of her ability to out nurture me, right? There's no reason for her to be jealous of my masculinity and, ability to be in control and lead, right? Because
we each have our different powers.
And those powers are beautiful, right? To each their own, right? So that is huge for me. And that's huge. And again, when you're jealous of somebody else's powers and you try to be that person, you're going to be unhappy because you're not living your authentic life. You're not rolling with, that higher consciousness, right? Because it's jealousy, right? It's like, and the corporate media and who else is like cramming this shit down both like men and women's throats to try to like fool you into being inauthentic. To be jealous of that other superhero's powers when you should be learning to tap into your own powers and exploit those and be the best superhero that you can be with the powers that you were given.
I don't have to compete with a man to feel good about myself. That's what I've learned and recognized through this process too. That's not my competition. It doesn't need to be, because we're not competing fairly or equally, because I have, like he said, I have my own strengths that I can use, for myself. So
like her superpower, like when she's delicate and in surrender, that makes me feel like a fucking king, right? That is a superpower in itself. Inspires me to go out and want to be great, to do all these things. And yes, that's innately in myself. But when she is delicate in my flower, then it like amplifies it, right? It's like, it's given me like testosterone pills naturally.
I love that. I love so much of what you guys have said there. And the idea that, we came into this earth and into this plane with these bodies, and they have their own inherent powers and gifts and strengths. And why wouldn't you just embrace them, right? Yeah. And like accept that that's the body that you have, and these are the powers therein. And so, yeah, I think that's beautiful. And there's something else that you said too, just about I think I dropped it. Because there's so much there's so much of I guess this idea that, you're missing out on this pathway into a higher part of yourself, right? That we did an interview, I don't know if you saw it, last week's interview with Pramila and David, and she was talking about how after some really horrific sexual abuse and wanting to do anything but be in her body, one of the things that really brought her back into her body was the notion of being a woman. I am a woman. And interestingly, her pathway into that was through the whole natural law study, or like natural man and woman. She's like, oh, I'm a woman. And somehow that was a key. That was a huge key for her to get into her own body and the truth of who she is on these multiple levels, and really begin the deeper healing journey that she's on and has been, beautifully going through. But that's, like, we have these gifts, and that's the whole point, is to connect to what they really are. And it's seemed like such a simple thing. And I guess because the messaging is so strong, and like I said, different versions of it through the generations. We had our own version of it growing up. It's a different version now. It's got a different slant to it, but we had our own versions of that in our generation too. And I'm sure even before that, right? So
now they're like mixing the genders, right? So nobody has superpowers, right? Like how anemic can we make both sides, right? So to not be able to recognize each their own, superpowers. And I think that, again, that's why your work is so important, because you have the work for the couples, you have the work for the women, you have the work for the men. And it's an invitation for all these people to learn about their superpowers.
Yeah, very well said. Through these electrical charged genitals that we have, right? Positive and negative charge attracting each other and coming together to generate all of this power.
Yes. Huge.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for being willing to have this conversation, because I think it's it's complex and nuanced, and can take a while if somebody hasn't thought about this before, and especially if they've come from, the modern moment of vernacular around these, masculine and feminine, then this could seem very confronting. But I think it's like listening to the truth of people's experiences and people who've really gone into that and had that. And like you said, and then the commonality within those experiences. And then the resonant theme also seems to be when people are reluctant to inhabit their bodies and those energies, it's for a reason. It's from trauma. It's from, a dissociation that is preventing them from really connecting there. And now on top of that, so much brainwashing and propaganda.
Yes.
Yep. And I was that woman, like even 2 years ago, if I were to have these conversations, I would have sounded like everybody else out there. Say, you're fucking crazy. If you're, if you're telling me I can't be the way I am because I'm a strong, assertive woman, but the whole definition of what that means has evolved and changed so much, and we're both in such a happy place, in our relationship. So it's been just life-changing, Kim.
And look, that's the truth I've seen as well, that even if people are existing in a polarity reversed or gender neutral relationship, they're not happy and they're not fucking. And if they're anywhere, if they are having any kind of sex, it's lame as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah,
it is. It's
like 3 minutes, we can tick it off the box. We did it, right? Like,
and then you go on to be miserable for the rest of the day because you are fighting your essence, right? You're fighting your consciousness, your higher self, and that is exhausting in itself.
Yeah, 100%. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything, and we'll have to bring you back for an update in the future.
Awesome. Thank you for having us, Kim.
The Coming Together for Couples Salon is now open. This is my 10-week online salon for couples. In it, we go deep into how to break out of the buddies and sexless rut and into the wild and orgasmic reality of sexual polarity, helping you to reconnect with and own your potent masculine and feminine essences. We also go into all things Orgasmopedia, from full body and energy orgasms, G-spot orgasms for her and him, cervical orgasms, and supercock stamina building so he can get her there. You will receive tutorials in tantric breathing and energy practices, yoni and lingam massage, how to use sexual reflexology maps and sexual positions for healing and rejuvenation, and much, much more. To sign up, go to kimanami.com, click on Sexual Savant Salons, and then you will find Coming Together. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe and also leave a review. And send someone else the gift of a healthy libido and an off-the-charts love life by sharing this episode with them. We'll be back next week, and in the meantime, many happy orgasms.